Okay, everyone, good evening or good morning to those of you all who are viewing this at the proper class time. You all know my face. I'm Professor Gore. And so I'll teach you in class. You all hear from me all the time. I'm sure at this point in the semester, you're tired of seeing my face and hearing my voice. And so this week is a Career in Criminal Justice Week. And so why in our class, we have with us 3 professionals who work in law and justice. I'm going to be introducing them. I'd like to emphasize some of the things that we have been talking about before we start, because I know a lot of people are hungry just to get started within their field, to ask questions, to ask follow-up questions. Please make sure you do this. Do me a favor, take notes on the education and the work that each person presents or they talk about or their background. Take solid notes on that, okay? Before I know you have a question in your head, but I need you to pay close attention to their education and their work and vocation. I need you to also listen for key advice and guidance, because the answer to your question might exist in how they answer the question on the panel. So you might have a question in your head, you're upset that this is pre-recorded, you wanted the opportunity to ask a spontaneous question. Just listen closely, because the guidance you may need could be in the answers that they provide to the questions. Finally, be flexible. A lot of people, you all started your undergraduate career or your associates, and some of you all are considering grad school and law school, and you're thinking, I know exactly what I want to be and what I want to do. I think that's great, but be sure that you're flexible, because as you can probably hear from some people on the panel, they had a set idea of what they wanted to do, and it might have changed, okay? So be flexible. That is what I'm asking. We're going to start with an introduction of each person on the panel, and then you'll stop hearing from me and you'll hear directly from them. We'll start with Ms. Marissa Ornelas. Ms. Marissa, would you wave your hand? I'm sure they can recognize you there, but Ms. Ornelas graduated from St. Louis University with a Bachelor's of Arts in Sociology. She is currently pursuing a Master's of Arts in Sociology. Prior to joining CARE Coalition, where she now works, the Capital Area Immigrants' Rights Coalition, she was an intern with the Dilly Pro Bono Project in South Texas, where she worked with immigrant mothers and children in detention. In addition, Ms. Ornelas interned with the Interfaith Committee on Latin America, IFCLA, working to coordinate DACA and Pro Se asylum clinics for immigrants in the St. Louis community. Finally, Ms. Ornelas interned with the Safe Passage Project in New York, assisting in translating and filing legal documents for immigration court. At CARE Coalition, right now where she serves, she is a legal assistant where she works directly with unaccompanied minors. So that is Ms. Ornelas. Her title is that of an advocate and also a legal assistant. We'll be hearing from her. We also have Mr. Royce Moody here. Mr. Moody, would you just wave your hand as well? I know people can see your title. Mr. Moody, oh, and I should have changed his title. That is a typo. I apologize, Mr. Moody, but he is a lieutenant with the Virginia Department of Corrections, where he serves as the watch commander in a small facility in Lawrenceville, Virginia. His role is to supervise his staff and probationers. He keeps the institution running by choosing post assignments for staff and allowing probationers to facilitate the small groups to further their recovery. He is a graduate of the illustrious Norfolk State University. I love that. He is from Richmond, Virginia, and his current interests outside of his current work are podcast development, therapeutic communication, and lastly, preparing for his 3rd child with his beautiful wife of 8 years. He is a member of the NABCJ, the National Association of Blacks in Criminal Justice. Some students might be interested in that. So that is Mr. Royce Moody. Again, he is a correctional officer and a lieutenant with the Virginia Department of Corrections. So thank you, Mr. Moody, for joining us. And apologies again, Mr. Moody, for not changing that title. We also have Mr. Clark, Mr. Andrew Clark. Some of you may be familiar with him as he has served on a panel previously, and I think it was fall 2019, Mr. Clark. Is that right?
Yes, that was the first one. Yep.
Yes, thank you. And so he is to those of you all who may not have heard from him before, he is a criminal defense attorney and the founder of his law firm. So he's a New York native, and he received his undergraduate degree, his bachelor's from the University of Delaware, his Juris Doctorate, which is a law degree, that's what the Latin term comes from George Washington University Law School. He has always had a passion for advocacy, as he is an alumni of the highly regarded District of Columbia Public Defender's Office Summer Law Clerk Program, okay? And the District of Columbia Law Students in Court program. After his post-law school judicial clerkship, he continued to master his litigation skills at a law firm in Arlington, Virginia. After leaving that law firm, he founded his own law firm, which is called the A. Clark Law PLLC, the law firm, and he serves people within the DMV area. And that's Mr. Clark. You all saw him speak earlier. So again, you all have a lot of information. These slides also will be available under course content on Blackboard, but we have a great deal of expertise here already with their education and their organizations. We're going to start, of course, with some questions. These are questions that were submitted by students and also questions that were generated to do some ice breaking, okay? So everyone take a deep breath and we will direct this question to everyone on the panel, okay? And so the first question that a student asked here, actually, let me make sure I have an updated one. Some students sent questions today after class. So the first question I have is, what does a day look like in your field of work? And we can go in order, starting with Miss Ornelas, then go to Mr. Moody, and then Mr. Clark.
I can just go through my day today. So I worked with detained unaccompanied minors who are detained by ORR. And so today we had a shelter visit, and those usually occur weekly. And then I also just have a lot of client communication. So as a legal assistant, you're usually put on several different cases with different attorneys. And so I'm usually in charge of client correspondence, making sure clients understand what's going on, a lot of scheduling. And then I also just kind of help in, we have our administrative tasks. So I'm on a direct rep legal assistant. So I also have court docket that we help with every month. It's just a different range of tasks, but we do have to be able to manage casework and our administrative tasks.
Thank you, Ms. Ornelas. Mr. Moody?
Okay, excuse me. My day to day, I work night shift, so I get to work about 5:30 in the evening, and the first thing we do when we get to work is we do a count to make sure that we have all probationers there that should be accounted for. After that, we secure the facility and do certain checks to make sure there's no security breaches and make sure all locks are on doors and on closets or refrigerators to make sure that everyone is safe. And then because it's night shift, we only have small programs. So if there's church or any religious program, then we would let the guys out for that into the visitation room. And then we have another count at 9 o'clock. After 9 o'clock, 9 o'clock. After 9 o'clock, it goes into the quiet hours or night shift. So therefore, they're at that point they're relaxing, preparing for the next day, and we continue to count again at midnight and 3 in the morning, and then we do another count at 5:30. For me, night shift is very slow and steady, so it allows me to get a lot of paperwork done and stay ahead of any pile up that comes my way.
Thank you, Mr. Moody.
Yeah, my day is kind of hectic. It's different every single day. So one of the things that I try to do is every morning, which because I just had twins, that kind of has changed. But every morning I wake up in the morning and go for a run. Then I have breakfast, drop my daughter off, have coffee, and that's literally the only thing that stays the same every single day. There are days that I could be working from home. There's days that I could be working at the office. There's days that I could have to go to court in Fairfax or Prince William or DC or Montgomery County or Charles County. So those things are just depending on what day it is. In terms of jobs functions, writing pleadings, which now because I now have a larger staff, I've kind of gotten away from doing that. But I'm supervising I'm also at the same time I'm on the phone with my legal assistant, making sure that she has everything that she needs. Client call will come in while I'm driving down 66 or 95, and it's just it's a joy to be able to set your own schedule, know what your appointments are. But writing and reading is something that I do on a daily basis consistently, to the point now where I can look at a document, a one-page document, and I can deeply read it and take as much time as I need and not try to speed read and rush through things. And that's a talent that I had to learn, because when I was working for a firm and I wasn't working for myself, I felt the time pressure of I have to get this done at a certain time. But now that I'm working for myself, I don't necessarily have that kind of pressure, so I can take my time and read things more thoroughly. So on a daily basis, I can, be at 9 o'clock at night, I could be reading something, because I know I couldn't do it at 5 o'clock because I had to pick up my daughter. So it's just the lifestyle and the work balance that I've chosen, which sometimes is hectic, but overall, it's a joy to do.
Thank you for sharing, Mr. Clark. It sounds like all of you all have very demanding schedules, a lot of different responsibilities. Students, I want you to hone in on the fact that even though they have great work that they're doing in court, great work that they're doing in facilities and in criminal justice, they still have administrative duties. And they're making sure that they handle their administrative duties on time in an excellent fashion so that they can get to the substance of the work. So I do want everyone to make sure you paid attention to see that every person here represented, whether they're a business owner or whether they're a legal assistant or in the facility, they had to do some type of clerical work, okay? I'm not fussing, just pointing it out. That being said, this question is also for everyone, and we'll do it in reverse order, starting with Mr. Clark, Mr. Moody, and then Ms. Ornelas. One student wanted to know, why did you choose this career path? Why this particular work?
So my dad is a criminal defense attorney in New York, and I grew up swearing that I would not become an attorney. Then I went to college, I graduated, I worked for a few years, and I was drawn to the advocacy work that being an attorney would provide. And I knew that I did not want to be in that corporate setting. So I went to law school, I graduated from GW, and I first started as a commercial. First, I was a judicial law clerk, and then I became a commercial litigation associate. And although I still take cases like that, I felt like there was something that was missing. So I went back to doing criminal defense, and the reason I like criminal defense is really the satisfaction that you get when a case ends your way. And it doesn't always mean that someone's found not guilty. It doesn't always mean that someone doesn't go to jail, but the outcome that you get for your client is something that your client is okay with and your client is happy with. And that kind of satisfaction is all throughout, not only myself, but my associates and my legal assistant, that I will not bring someone in unless they have that same passion, that it's not about getting a paycheck. It's not about the amount of money that you bring in, the amount of billable hours, but the quality of the work that you're doing. And I find that practicing criminal defense, you're able to focus on the quality of the work and the outcome that your client wants versus worrying about money or billable hours or budgets.
Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Okay, so for me, uh, I actually went to school to be a early childhood educator. I taught kindergarten for 2 years, and then I was a math specialist for 2 years, and found out afterwards that that wasn't the career for me. After that, I went into hospitality management while my wife was attending school, and because of her school, I wasn't able to progress, so I left that because someone suggested corrections. Um, as a child, I always wanted to be a police officer, but because of my family and certain fears with being a police officer, they shot that down. So I stayed away from it. But I tried to be a correctional officer, and I love it. Actually, I always believed. Man, when I say this, I do not speak for the department. By no means, these are all my personal opinions. But I've always found that my purpose is to help people. I thought that was through teaching at first, and then once I became a correctional officer, I found purpose in my job, and I felt that I was here on purpose and intentionally, and I made every day intentional. Um, I can say that I had a pretty great childhood and a pretty well life up until now, and I feel like that my presence and my consistency inside of a prison is a blessing to the guys that I have come encounter with, whether they like to say it or not. But my job is the judge already judged them. That's not my job. My job is to correct the wrongs that they have already did and help them go back to excuse me, go back in society as a rehabilitated person.
And before you start, Ms. Ornelas, I want to point out a word that Mr. Moody said that we have been utilizing in our course. That's the term rehabilitation and reentry. So you see how it's put into practice in these careers. And you also heard Mr. Clark mention advocacy in his work. And these are also terms that we've been breaking down throughout the semester. So you see these keywords are used in everyday criminal justice fields. But thank you, Mr. Moody. We got Ms. Ornelas next. If you want me to repeat the question, it's why have you chosen this career path?
That's such a long answer, but I think, I mean, both of my parents are immigrants, and my dad lived here without documentation for a while. But um, going into college, I think in immigrant families especially, there's this idea that going to college is going to make you more money. So I went into college being nursing, and then I changed to public health because I was like, I need to do something in the science field because I need money. And then I changed to sociology and I called my mom and she was like, what are you doing? This is not what you're not going to make any money. This is not the purpose of college. And so I do want to really emphasize that, I know that there might be some external pressures maybe from family that you should do one career path over the other, but it's really important that you find something that you like to do. And I was able to find that through an internship in St. Louis, where I started working with immigrants. And I guess the most pivotal moment is when I worked in the family detention center and I was there during family separation. And so I really saw the impacts of that on the kids that I worked with and also on the moms. And I knew I wanted to do this. I also want to name that I've never really seen directors of these immigration programs be people who look like me, that being Black or brown people, and I don't like that. And I think that I want the attorneys and the people who are the heads of these organizations to also be representative of the community. And so that's why I've decided to stick with this, because I really value my community and I really think that providing nonprofit services, although they are free, these communities still deserve high quality services. They still deserve the chance to fight their cases. And that doesn't always happen. So that's why I decided to be a legal assistant, and hopefully a therapist or a lawyer one day.
Thank you for sharing that, Ms. Ornelas. That was really, really impactful, just like Mr. Clark and Mr. Moody's response. Another word that she said within that was internships. She focused on the fact that she didn't really know what her passion was, but she knew she wanted to do something that had an impact. And her internship was a pivotal moment in her life. I know a lot of students are saying, I don't have time, or maybe I'm too busy, but if you can swing even a 1 day a week internship throughout your process, please make sure you do it because you see the direct impact. I have some direct questions that students have asked directly for each of you. So I think, again, we're going to start with Mr. Clark here. Mr. Clark, a student asked, okay, so how many years, and this is how they wrote it. Okay, so how many years of school did you attend? And would you say that it was worth it in the end? Sorry, Mr. Clark, I think you're muted. Not.
Starting from college, right? Starting from college, I would say it was 7 years. And yes, it was worth it. While I was going through it, I was like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? But now looking back on it, I've been practicing now for 7 years this year. Wow. Looking back on it now, it was worth every single long night or early rise, because I'm doing exactly what I want to do and living the life that I want to live. So it was definitely worth it. You know, 14 years ago, deciding on this journey. And I actually too, I was also a major in sociology in college, which for me led to a career in human resources at first before I went to law school. But it's been worth the journey every single step of the way, even just the relationships that you gain from going to college and then also law school as well.
And a follow-up question to that, Mr. Clark, that a student had is there is there an age limit for attending law school? Would you say that someone who is past your 20s or your early 30s, is it too late to start a career in law or go to law school at that age?
It's not too late. One thing that I would say though, if you're an older student, is that you need to know exactly what you want to do, because it's highly unlikely as an older student that the prospects for getting a corporate law job are going to be there versus when you're younger, you come out of law school straight from college or after 3 years. So you really need to know whether or not you're going to open up your own practice or if you want to work at a small law firm and have that kind of passion, have those internships, have those clerkships, and get that experience, because I think employers, unfortunately, somewhat illegal as well, they're going to look to the fresh, someone that they can mold for their policies versus someone that's been around for a while and has their own habits. So it's not too late to start, but unlike someone that's coming fresh out of college going to law school, you really need to know why you're going to law school and answer that question before you spend, thousands and thousands of dollars on education.
Absolutely, Mr. Clark. That's great. So students who are in my class who are at that age group, they're finishing their bachelor's degree or your associates, it's important that you make your law degree work for you and your bachelor's and all of your other degrees that you intend to receive. You have to hustle outside of just the classroom. It's really, really important, again, that you identify what it is you want to do. And a big part of that is having internships that you can place on your resume. Thank you for sharing that, Mr. Clark. We have a question for Mr. Moody, a student here. A couple of students are interested in working as a correctional officer. One student asked, what skills are most important for a position in this field? And have you ever felt afraid in working or clocking into work? I know that's a double question, so I guess we can start with what skills are most important for a position in this field.
The most important skills in this field would be communication and being present when you're at work, always being present in of your surroundings. Um, in this field, prisons work from a work center level all the way up to a level 5. So somebody at a work center would have been maybe have been locked up for 20 years, and they have been a model inmate, and that they would work their level down so they can go to. It's not as many gates at a work center, and they can go out of the institution and work on a day-to-day basis. Whereas level 2s are dorm facilities where they have lesser charges, lesser times, so they're not going to be incarcerated as long. And then you get to the 3, 4s, and 5, where their criminal their criminal history is a little bit more violent, a little bit more cutthroat, and they have more time. So therefore, their reactions to us as officers, psych people, and the warden is a little bit different, because sometimes they feel as that they have nothing to lose, because some of them unfortunately are never going home. Um, but it is always the most important thing that they teach to you when you first come across it is to be fair, firm, and consistent. I started corrections when I was 27, so I was pretty solid in who I was as a man. And working in the facilities here, a lot of the guys, the male facilities that I've worked in, a lot of the guys, unfortunately, look like me and are around my age. So I was humble enough to know that, one wrong turn, that could have been me. So it's a humbling experience, and like I said again, it's a blessing. It is all what you make it to be, because you're going to meet people who's been there 20 years and they're unhappy, and they just make work hard. But I've learned through other professions that that's work in general sometimes. So you have to be your own light in that. And then the last second question was, was I scared? Of course. When my very first day, I went and they gave us a tour. I expected prison to look like what looked like on TV, and they were in cells. But I started in a dorm, so therefore, just as close as we are in these blocks here, they were that close to me, and that was just something that I had to get used to, and realize that I was like, oh, okay, so prison ain't what I've seen on TV. So, but again, then you learn about the levels, and you learn why it's like that, and unfortunately, you don't never want to get comfortable, but you get comfortable coming to work because I refuse to allow somebody to run me off my job if I don't want to go.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Moody. I think that satisfies sufficiently the students' questions. Thank you for that. That was really helpful. Wow, I just keep thinking about your experience probably on your first day. I can only imagine, but the fact that you've identified in a very humble manner that one wrong step that could have been any of us. And so it's really great that you've taken that position and that you're serving in that way. A student here for Miss Ornelas has asked, specifically, have you ever represented someone with an attorney and disagreed with an attorney's decision? If so, what did you do, or how do you handle that? And I'm not asking for you to give specific examples. I told the student you can't because of confidentiality, but how do you deal with having supervisors or attorneys make a decision that you don't agree with because you've had so much experience and you identify what works for you?
I mean, I think a lot of my job, honestly, is dealing with attorneys who have different working styles, dealing with attorneys who have different opinions, who have different levels of knowledge. And so I think that um, if I don't, I mean, I'm a person who likes to voice my opinion, and I think that that has been helpful for me. But I understand that a lot of people may not be that way. But I also think as a legal assistant, it's important to understand that, and this is the way that I think about my job now, this is a stepping stone for me. And so I also need to understand why the attorney is trying to make that legal argument. And if I don't agree, I will say I don't agree. And I have enough experience, in my opinion, to say why I don't. Um, but I think, ultimately it's the attorney's decision. But again, I also take those as learning opportunities, especially if you want to stay in this field and if you want to continue um, to work in this field. The way that I think about it even now is like at my next job, I want to be a senior legal assistant. And so what can I learn now so that I can do that? And so even if you don't agree, I would try to understand why the attorney wants to make that argument. Yeah.
I did it. I did it. I am trying to avoid that all 2020, and it just happened. That being said, that was a great answer. Again, exemplifying humility and also understanding that the learning never stops, right? And so once you get to a certain point, of course, you can puff out your chest and explain like this is where I stand with it. But you will always have someone usually above you unless you are a business owner. And even when you are a business owner, there's usually in criminal justice a judge who is presiding over your work and someone else you have to work with. So a time and a place and discretion are going to be very important. Thank you for sharing. Again, this next question is for both Ms. Ornelas and Mr. Clark. Um, why would a law firm or why would a law organization ever represent someone that they feel or know is guilty? This question is tricky, I know, for some people, but the question I think that the student is getting at outside of the verbatim language here is that if you feel or see evidence that weigh in the favor of the person being explicitly guilty of a crime, how is it that an attorney or a firm or nonprofit would take that case and represent them?
I'll start. I always get this question, especially as a criminal defense attorney. And the way that I see it is that it's not my job to judge guilt or innocence. That's just not my job. My job is to defend the Constitution. And the Constitution says that you have a right to competent counsel, myself, on every occasion. And also, you have the right to a fair and balanced trial. And those rights should not be taken from you just because the facts may be overwhelmingly against you. And I don't ask my clients whether or not they did it. That's just not good for them to do that anyway. No matter how many of the facts are against you, you should never ask your client whether or not they did it. And even if they did tell you that they did it, if they can't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, it is your duty when you took that oath, when you decided to go to law school, when you decided to be sworn in as an attorney, and you decided to take that case on as a criminal defense attorney, that you defend them to the best of your abilities. So I don't ever see, regardless of what the fact patterns are, I never see my clients as someone is guilty or that person deserves that. Every person in my eyes deserves a great defense, which we try to provide on a daily basis, which is stressful because there's so much against you. I mean, at the point that someone charges you, the assumption, right, based on even this question, is that you're charged and you had to be charged for a reason. I think that over the past year, we've learned that, especially in the Black and Brown communities, that is just simply not true. And we really need to reevaluate the status of a criminal defendant and bring back the status of innocence before proven guilty. And I think that question would answer itself at that point.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Amazing answer. Again, everyone has a right to due process. Everyone has the right to competent counsel and a fair trial. And so again, if those of you all who are saying, I want to be a public defender, some people have said, no, I want to be a criminal defense attorney. Your role is not to be the jury or the judge. Of course, you want to prepare your client, but you will have to provide service, and not every client is going to be a nun. Everyone has a past in some way. And so that's your role as a defense attorney. I also love that you plainly said you do not ask your client whether you did it or not. I think that is also a common misconception, but that's neither here nor there. Ms. Ornelas, do you also have something that you wanted to add to that? Have you represented someone in your capacity that has done something that the evidence wasn't in their favor? And how did you go about representing them? What's your philosophy on that?
I mean, I think in immigration, it's a little bit different because technically all of the people that I worked with are being charged for entering without inspection, which means entering illegally. And I think that like the way that you think about that charge and like in immigration, honestly, I don't agree with the system. But I think I also work with children, right? And so that creates a different nuance of like, why did this child do this? There's a lot of questions, but like Mr. Clark said, I think regardless of what they have done, they still deserve to be able to fight their case in court and in front of a judge. And he gets to decide whether they get to stay here or they will be deported. And it's not my position to be like, I don't want to represent this client because they, for example, were a former gang member. We just have to take the case for what it is and move forward. And so I think that's my opinion on that question.
That's helpful. Take the case for what it is and move forward. Again, I think Ms. Ornelas is being really humble here, but she's represented people who have admitted to her that maybe they have been the perpetrator of sexual assault or gang violence or other types of crime. And it can be hard to represent those people because you might identify with being a victim, or you might be against what it is that they've done. But as the attorney, your job is to put away your emotions and your political views and to give them a fair representation. That's not an easy job to do. So lots of shout out to both Mr. Clark and Ms. Ornelas. We're going to move back to Mr. Moody. A question for a student is, from a student is, how do you cope with your emotions as you work with people who are locked up for life, is the question that they asked. I think they were going to ask something about the death penalty, but that's been abolished in Virginia. I'm not sure how it's going to be applied retroactively or otherwise, but how do you cope with your own emotions knowing that you are working with people who are going to be locked up for the rest of their lives? Does that impact you? And I think I'm going to expand the question to ask, how do you take care of yourself in this role?
Fortunately, I haven't dealt with any lifers, but I have dealt with some sex offenders who have been civilly committed, and honestly, it's a little bit at peace knowing that the guys who get civilly committed for their sexual offense, it's kind of I'm kind of okay with it because you unfortunately you do find out about their crimes sometimes, and so therefore I'm like, oh yeah, that was pretty heinous, and then their actions in front of you sometimes doesn't show any remorse, so therefore you're not like, I don't feel any I'm not going to treat you any different than I would treat the next man next to me. However, but there is a reason for why you're here, and you haven't learned anything from it. So um and I am very much a person that I go to work, and when I clock out, I'm off. I'm fortunately, unlike Mr. Clark and Miss Ornelas, I don't have to take work home with me. Um, mm, it's open. Unfortunately, I don't have to take work home with me, so I don't get that attached. I don't know. I don't get that attached at all. I haven't at least. So
And I think that's something to point out because I think, especially in this day and age, there's a lot of jobs where, and in COVID, we have portable everything, right? I think everyone has somewhat of a home office setup at this point. And in the future, we'll see what that looks like. But what does that look like for work-life balance? What Mr. Moody is saying in his work is that he clocks in, he does, of course, an excellent job, but when he leaves his work at home. And so that's one of the benefits of working as a correctional officer. I can imagine that you don't take your work home unless you don't, of course, you don't cope with your own emotions. And so you're saying, Mr. Moody, that you're a person who doesn't need a whole lot of attention as far as that's concerned. You're a person who's already programmed to leave your work at work.
yeah. And with that being said, I am an advocacy of therapy. So like I said again, when I started, I was good with myself when I went into there. So you need some type of guidance or grounding, and whether it be spiritual or talking to someone. So that helps. And then I can talk to my wife about work just as much as she can talk about what she has going on too. So I have some release.
That's really good. Thank you for sharing. And also brave, because therapy is now becoming something that's more at the forefront of conversations in Black and Brown communities. So yes, students, I know I've sent some people to counseling services. There's no shame in getting the help that you need in order to do what you need to. This question is for everybody. The question here is, have you ever seen someone, a client, or for Mr. Moody, someone who was detained in a correctional facility, have you ever seen them in a personal capacity? Meaning, have you ever seen them when you were out at a restaurant with your family? Have you ever seen them at the grocery store? Have you ever run into someone that you serve while you were not in a professional capacity? And whoever can answer that, you can say no or yes, but has that ever happened, and how do you handle that?
I'll go first. I have definitely seen guys after they have been released out. That's another thing that they teach us in the department when we come in, especially when I worked in Chesapeake, that I worked in the reentry building. So they had 6 months or less, and they were going back to the same communities that we lived in. So I would run into them at the gas station, downtown at a restaurant and stuff, and they will always, the ones that I have run into, they will always say, Moody, you were good to me. I really appreciate it. You could have been another way, and you were that way with certain other people. You meet people where they at, but the guys that I ran into, I never had any issue. Now there could have been some guys that I ran into with the issue, but fortunately, God has been on my side.
Thank you for that. I'm glad to hear that God has been on your side. That's a real question, right? Especially since you're working in reentry programs where people are going to see you in the same community. What about you, Mr. Clark or Miss Ornelas? Have you ever seen anyone that you work with in a professional capacity outside?
No, I have not, and I, in some ways, hope I don't. I think that there is, I mean, I think that it also comes to boundaries. And I mean, I think this is a whole nother question, but right now I'm working from home, and for my job, I have to be extremely flexible. And I think that if you work in a nonprofit, there's also an expectation that, we meet clients where they are. So if they need to meet after 5 p.m., we're meeting with them after 5 p.m. But in terms of seeing them, no, I really don't know honestly, how I would react to that because of a lot of our clients. I don't know. I think that's a difficult situation in my case.
Yeah, I have, but that's just a function of my job because I also have represented some people that are either family members or friends. So by virtue of that, I still see them all the time. For me, it's not really a bad thing. I think if their case had gone uh, the wrong way, then maybe it would be really uncomfortable for me. But I thankfully have gotten great outcomes from them, so they're always very happy to see me.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. So this is really interesting class. You're hearing some people say no, but some people saying yes. And so in these roles, it's important to also remember that while you're a professional at work, you also might have to be a professional turning it on and off in your personal capacity in your personal life. And so that sounds like it's something that if you're interested in doing this, you'll have to find that balance like these professionals have. Mr. Clark, another question for you. How do you handle high caseloads? And how do you know which ones to prioritize? Which cases are most important?
Uh, I don't I don't consider the caseload that I have a high caseload. There was a time period where I felt as though I was getting to that point, and I made sure that I made steps to limit the amount of new cases that came in so that I can resolve the current cases that I had. One of the things that I do that I'm a stickler for is managing my time and my calendar. And I think that that's something that's overlooked. I think you brought up the administrative piece of it, right? And that's something that as an attorney, if you're not organized and you don't have any time management skills, uh, this job could eat you alive because there are going to be constant pressures, people from all different directions that want your attention on one day, and you have to really prioritize, is this something that needs to be done right now, or can I call that person back? Do I need to write this motion today, or can I move this to next week? There's something else that came in that I wasn't expecting, and I need to pivot and move. If you do not have those kind of skills, or if you procrastinate a lot, then this job, especially if you let that caseload get too high, is definitely gonna drown you.
That's good, Mr. Clark. I heard a word, two words, time management. That is something that you all can also seek out help and resources on from the Career Center. It is very, very important to get that down. I'm going to ask this question generally to all three people. I know everyone has their own method by which they keep a track of their calendar, personal and otherwise. But what do you all use? Do you use any applications, agendas, list, all of the above? What is it that you all utilize to keep track of your life? Because I've heard people say they're parents and attorneys, business owners, officers. Listen, it's a lot going on. People are in school. How are you all keeping track of your time? And we can start with Ms. Ornelas, go to Mr. Moody, and then Mr. Clark.
I mean, I think it depends on the kind of person that you are. Like, I don't really like to be, I mean, I'm already on my computer all day, so I like to write things down in a planner. I'm also a student, I'm getting my master's, and so I think that for me, my job could easily consume me if I let it, because uh, since we are a nonprofit, I do have a high caseload and I am on a um, a large number of cases. And so I think it's also about making sure or writing down what you have to do for each case and what the timeline is, because things do pop up. Like I had a client this week that kind of just popped out of nowhere that I had to prioritize, and other things had to shift. And so for me, it's writing things down. I have like I like to have things in my work calendar so that everyone else knows also if I'm busy, and if I have time to talk to them or not, especially during remote world where we don't really see each other. In terms of school, I write things down. And I'm also really open with my professor and I let her know like I'm working full time. And so um, I think that's another really good thing is to be really open with your professor because sometimes they're able to accommodate you if they know that you are working full time. Now, I'm not going to say that they're always going to do that, but my professors have been gracious enough to sometimes accommodate me if I'm not able to go to class because of a client meeting or things like that. But I would definitely say figure out what your method is. If that's like having a Google Calendar, having it in a planner, um, I think that's the most important thing.
Thank you.
The good thing about corrections, we run off a 24-hour clock.
Okay.
So we are creatures of habit and we do the same thing every day. It's supposed to be done at this time. For anything outside of that, I have a planner and me and the other watch commanders, we use a lot of sticky notes. We have our own color and we just put them everywhere. Don't touch this. This is da 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 da. And we have a pass down log book. So we communicate like that. And then we communicate with our supervisors through email on a daily basis. We will, whether we're at work or not, we'll get an email of what happened at the facility during your shift, and that way we have all of those to go back and look at um, when we're at work because we work shifts. So I'm like I said, I'm off tonight. I go back tomorrow night and Friday night, but then I'm off the whole weekend, and they'll send me what went on that weekend as well.
Thank you for being here on your off night. We appreciate it. Okay, Mr. Clark, your turn.
I use Google Calendar. I use my notes to prioritize more long-term projects as well. And I also use the reminder system on my phone. And I don't use paper because I would probably lose it, but that's just me. So, but my wife, she uses paper for all of her calendaring, and outside of work, she does a good job of keeping me straight. But my if I something happened to my phone and my Google Calendar, I would be completely lost on what to do most days.
This is helpful. Class, I want you to pay attention. No one here said that they just remember. Okay, everyone here has something that they write down. Everyone here has a system at work or with their families. You all, as students, have access to Microsoft Outlook calendars. You all, as students and people, have free access to Gmail and Google calendars, and you also can get a planner. Please make sure that you are utilizing these resources as students, as parents, as professionals, as working people. You all need to get a time management system down because it is essential to being a good criminal justice professional. That's the bare minimum. Okay, and so I know we're coming to the end of our time. I want to ask 3 more questions, if that's okay with people. This question is specifically for Mr. Moody. How do you cope with people? Oh, sorry, no, this is here's the question. How do you tackle someone, and I don't think they mean physically, but how do you tackle someone who displays symptoms of multiple mental illnesses? Have you ever, or how do you deal with someone who refuses to take their medication or receive therapy? And if that's too specific, please let me know, but a student was interested in that.
No, that's not too specific at all. Patience. Um, as a as an officer and as a supervisor dealing with somebody with a mental health illness in the facility, no one really knows what they have going on. We can see what mental health level they are at on their file on the computer, but as officers, we don't really know. But like I said, again, we're creatures of habit, and we typically work the same building and work with the same people every day that we work. So you get a idea of what this person's regular routines are. We have um, a paper. It's called the master pass, where it tells when they go to pill call and when they go to class. So you have some. So you learn their day to day operations, and then for me, it's when you notice someone is acting a little different than they normally do. You you want to try. I'm not. Let me use first. Let me say in corrections, you don't want to fraternize with them. But in the capacity that we work with them, you have to be able to differentiate the two and see what their needs are, because our job is to keep them safe from themselves and from everyone else around them. So usually you would isolate them to the point where you get them out of the pod and you just do a little bit of questioning, and you ask a lot of questions and you see where they're at with it and see if you can get them to walk with you to medical to get it. Now that was something I could do as a supervisor. As an officer, I had to, wait for someone to assist me, but you pay attention to their moods and their behavior, and then you ask questions and you ask if things trigger, because what some guys do, and what we like to call at the prison, is called checking in. They'll act as if they're having a breakdown, and then you ask them questions, and then you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna get you to do this and this and that, and then but before you do that, I'm gonna have to take you to the hole, and then they're gonna have to set you there, and then they'll be like, oh, I'm fine, I didn't want. They could be avoiding somebody because unfortunately we have gambling, and we do have gangs in prison, so sometimes they're trying to get away from someone or something to get out of something. So sometimes that's why you ask all those questions, so that you can, if you can gauge and see if this is a real medical need, a mental health center, because we do have 24-hour psych that's on call at the prisons, that you can call and they can get an assessment, or they will come up here and speak to them if it deems so. But yeah, you just ask a lot of questions and you observe their movements, and you just go from there. You The thing about corrections and all the different windows that you can do while working in corrections, it's a great stepping stool to any criminal justice job, that they give you a little bit of everything. So if you wanted to take a turn on another road to do something different, you would be able to do so.
Mhm. And so there are medical professionals who are housed or who work in the detention center and serve the persons who are detained there.
Yes.
Okay. Wow. Okay. That's helpful. Thank you for that. So
You're
students
welcome.
heard that there are different ways to respond as a supervisor and then also as an officer as well. Thank you for sharing that, Mr. Moody. I have two more questions, so I will make it brief. It was funny. A lot of students have asked, and I think I told them that this was an inappropriate question. This is something they should Google, but I just want to share for laughs. And again, students, you all can Google the answer to this question. They wanted to know, what is your salary? How much do you get paid? Again, that's something that you want to Google, something that you can look into.
Not enough.
That is your answer. Okay, a criminal defense attorney, owner of a firm. People don't get paid enough for the work that they're doing. Instead, what I'm going to ask is if you can take a moment to just harp on and share briefly the most memorable moment, or a particularly memorable moment of your career. And it doesn't have to be extremely profound, but something that kind of illustrates the impact of your work. And whoever would like to share first can.
Um, I'll go first. This happened pretty recently, actually, and it wasn't something that was, the most profound thing that happened in my career, but it really, like, touched. I think for me, it really brought home why I'm doing this. So, I had a client that was incarcerated at the beginning of the pandemic, and from day one, he was adamant of his innocence, right? And all my clients are adamant of his innocence, but from day one, he was adamant about his innocence. And the court refused to release him. Um, there were a lot of different factors that were going on, and the court refused to release him. And he sat in jail for 7 months, just awaiting a trial date on the merits of his case, a date on the merits of his case, not a trial date, but a date on the merits of his case, for us to be able to file a motion to get to that point of his case. And on the day of the motion, again, client still incarcerated, the court decided to do what's called taking something under advisement, which means that they're not going to make a ruling today, but they're going to come back, they're going to go back and deliberate and make sure that they're making the decision in accordance to law. And I, I'll never forget it. I was coming out of court on another hearing, and I looked at my phone, and I get the email from the court that the order is there, and I'm like, yeah, as a criminal defense attorney, you get used to losing, so you're like, okay, the court didn't rule in my favor this time. So I'm looking at it, in the first paragraph, the court says, and the defendant's motion to suppress is granted. And I really stopped, and I was like, I'm fighting for this guy for 7 months because he's incarcerated, he's innocent, he should not be there, first time ever in jail, and for in his entire life. Just imagine, you're walking down the street free one day, never getting into any trouble, then you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, and boom, during a pandemic, you're in jail for 7 months, right? And the call that I had with him while he was still incarcerated, I will remember for the rest of my career, just on the other side, hearing that joy in his voice, that he knew he was going to see the breathe fresh air again, right? And then it took, another week until he was actually released, unfortunately, because of how the system is set up. But during that week, he was like, I'm going home soon. I got that day. I'm going home soon. And for me, it was like, this is why I'm doing this. And that's one of my stories that I have.
That is so touching, Mr. Clark. Thank you so much. Students, you see the type of work that you can do if you decide to be a criminal defense attorney, the direct impact that you'll have on people's lives in your work. Anyone else who wants to share?
I'll share. I think the biggest impact of my job has on me as far as I don't want to use the word relationship, but my relationship with the guys I supervise. It's the respect, and when I say guys, I'm talking about the inmates and the probationers. It's the respect that I receive from when I'm in there, and knowing that when I'm in there, and if I'm disciplining somebody, or if I'm giving somebody their accolades, that they know that I'm being fair, firm, and I'm consistent. Um, I realized when I realized that I had the respect of the population that I was supervising, was unfortunately I was having a verbal altercation with an inmate because he verbally assaulted a counselor, and I did not like it. And I probably said some things I shouldn't have said, and I probably walked up on him like I shouldn't have. But I had my partner. We was only two of us in the building. I had my partner was in the booth, and they were yelling on across like, Moody, come inside, Moody, come inside. But all I could see was rage at this point. And I had inmates that were sitting there watching it, and literally got in between us and said, Moody, you don't want to lose your job over this guy. We'll handle him. And I'm like, okay, so you guys can't do that. But it was like, why I didn't know that, you think they don't necessarily care about you, because some of them can be very insensitive sometimes, but all of them are not supposed to be there, and some of them do want to make things right. So when I learned that I had the respect of the population, and that they I guess cared about my well-being in somewhat way, deemed that I was doing something right, and I really appreciated that part of my career.
That shows the bond and also the respect and the reputation that carried in that moment. I think that's a great example, and I appreciate you sharing and being so candid. That's a beautiful moment. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Moody.
No
And
problem.
Ms. Ornelas, last but not least, of course.
Yes, I do want to address the salary question. I think something that is important to
Okay.
it's something that is important to learn that we don't necessarily learn in school is how to negotiate salaries. And I think that that's something that I wish I would have known more before I took the salary that I have now. But so I think that I would encourage students to learn more about how the appropriate way to negotiate a salary before you take a job. Other than that, I think my most one something that I'm never gonna forget is I worked with a family at the detention center. We were volunteer based, so we had volunteers come in weekly. Um, and the volunteer didn't prep the family correctly. So at the detention center, we were prepping them for their asylum or credible fear interviews, and that would determine whether they got out or whether they were deported. So it was really fast paced. It was really intense. We would prep around 70 people a day. Um, and so I prepped this family. She had some pretty traumatic things happen in home country. Um, I was like, okay, you're ready. She went to her interview. And then they get a notification of whether they're gonna be released or deported, basically like pass or fail. And she ran back into the trailer and she was like, Marisa gane, voy a salir. Which means Marissa, I won and I'm gonna be able to leave. And she was able to be released with her child, who I think at the time was like 8 or 9. Um, but as a legal assistant, I don't always get like the big, like I'm not an attorney, so I obviously don't get like the big wins. But I think that for me, um, that showed me that like we really are like just getting people out of detention is a step in the right direction. And so that was something that was really impactful for me, and I think why I continue to do this work.
That's beautiful. I just want to say that legal assistants are the backbone of every single firm, every single practice, that without legal assistants, there is no law practice. So people who are interested in being lawyers, I think it's important that you understand to get anything done, you have to go through or work with a competent legal assistant. And shout out to you, Ms. Ornelas, for your work as well. I know we are over time. I just asked for maybe 5 more minutes, if that's okay for everyone. If you're not, I understand if you need to sign off. But some students wanted to know, are there opportunities for internships where you all work, or are there opportunities that you all can cite to within your career to get where you are? So whether it is at your own facility that you work at, or the center you work at, or if there's an internship that you want to share that you may have done or you've heard about, students are getting ready for this summer. And we can start in whichever order we'd like again. But is there an opportunity for interns?
We don't have internships. However, I know with probation and parole with the Department of Corrections, you can volunteer. Um, so if that's something, if you're interested in that part of the corrections, that you can volunteer with probation and parole, and it also helps with the hiring process if they know you. Probation and parole, it's definitely one of those parts of corrections where I know somebody and we're gonna get them in there. As far as the Virginia Department of Corrections, we are always hiring officers, whether you work there just in the summertime. They will try to work with you and even give you some money for school if you decide to come along with us. They are currently giving out signing bonuses, and I don't know quite where everyone lives right now, but are there is there is a prison, a low level prison close to the DMV area, if you are to be interested. But if you just go on the Virginia Department of Corrections .virginia.gov website, you'll see all the opportunities that they offer.
Okay, students, so write that down, look into it. Those are opportunities. One is the Virginia Department of Corrections for internships, probation and parole positions, and volunteer work. Again, it's all about your network and building your network. So make sure you're doing that. Mr. Clark or Ms. Ornelas, you can go next. And I should have also stated that these are undergraduate and associate degree seeking students who are in the DMV area. Of course, some of them may have moved somewhere else during the pandemic and they're taking the course remotely. So don't be shy about sharing things that aren't necessarily right in the heart of DC.
I know.
No, okay, I'll go. I think I first want to emphasize the importance of internships and like how social capital is really, really important when you're trying to find a job. I learned that after I graduated, like, yes, you can apply, but knowing someone who works there or having previously worked there really is what gets your application out of the huge pile that they're probably receiving. And so I would really encourage people, usually, I mean, if you're working with a nonprofit, I think they usually won't fund you, but they will try to be flexible with you. I will also say that I got a lot of funding for my internships through my university and just speaking to people. So people are willing to find the money for you if that's something that's important to you and you really don't have time to do an internship that's free or that where you're working for free. I think Care Coalition is looking for interns. I'm not sure if that's just legal interns, but I would check the website. Um, and I think one benefit of the pandemic is that a lot of things are remote right now. And so you could probably find an internship that's in another state or another city, and they'd be willing to make that remote for you. Um, but if you have any questions about internships or about immigration, I'm happy to speak with anyone about those things.
Thank you, Ms. Ornelas. So that's carecoalition.org. That's CAIR Coalition. Google that and you'll be able to see the internships that are available. Ms. Ornelas and panel, I will not share your personal information unless we can talk about that later. But if you're comfortable, class, and if she's comfortable, I will be able to share her contact information. Just panel, we will be talking about business and career etiquette before they reach out. So don't worry on that end. And Mr. Clark to close us out with the internship moment.
Yeah, that was something that I don't know, I was just drawn to when I was in law school and also when I was an undergrad, that I knew that you were not just going to be able to get the degree and then go into the job that you wanted. You had to start working in that field from the beginning, one, to see if you even like it, right? And two, to enhance your resume, and three, to be able to say, look, this is the body of work and this is what I've done when you're sitting in an interview post graduation. With that being said, A. Clark Law is looking for a legal assistant part-time. We are actually moving our offices to National Harbor starting in June, and we're looking for someone working about 20 hours a week, doing a lot of administrative work. It depends on how, as we grow, as you become more competent in what you're doing, hours grow as well, but definitely don't want to detract from your schoolwork. Right now we are a 4-person team. We are very, very small, but also agile, which means that that's why there's different things and different opportunities to jump in and learn what you want and ask questions as well. So if you can send me your resume or just send me a message, or Ms. Score can definitely send me a message of anyone that's interested to info@aclarklaw.com, and we can get you on the calendar, schedule a video conference so you can meet the team, and we probably would be starting you whenever you're available sometime in the summer, and it is paid, not very much, but it is paid hourly. So if you're interested, please reach out to us.
Mr. Clark, this is great news for some of our students and who might be listening. For those who might be brand new, freshmen, and have no experience in working, is there an opportunity to possibly do unpaid internships with the Clark Law Firm at this time?
Oh, yes. If you're willing to do it unpaid as well, we can forego the paid version of it and do unpaid if you're just looking to, hang around and get experience and shadow people. That's definitely something that's welcome. And the reason that that's important to me is because that's the reason that I'm able to do what I'm doing now, is because someone else allowed me to shadow them. Someone else allowed me to work for free for them. I really didn't start getting paid in this profession until after I graduated. So all the internships that I did beforehand, either I got grants for or I was doing completely for free. So that's definitely the best way to get the most bang out of your internship.
Absolutely. I want to highlight that to students who are thinking, oh, I'll do the legal assistant position. Whoa, 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 hold on. If you are a freshman and sophomore, you have no work experience, I think it's important that you consider doing an internship so you can get the hang of business etiquette. And also, I want to highlight that one of his current legal assistants was hired from attending one of these panels that Professor Gore put on. I just have to say that. So connection is really important. You heard Ms. Ornelas talk about social capital. You heard Mr. Moody talk about the illustrious Norfolk State University. All of these opportunities with University of District of Columbia panels and things like that are opportunities for you to build your network. Okay, so again, I will not be sharing their information until students have come through me first. But if you want to apply for legal assistant position, if you want to apply with the Virginia Department of Corrections or with Care Coalition, that information will be made available to my students and other students who are watching this who aren't in my class. You can email me at courtney.gore@udc.edu. I want to thank our panel so much for making themselves available. Did anyone have any closing thoughts before we end the panel? I know we are already over time. No, and there's no pressure here. So students, just want to reiterate the importance of the value of the information that they shared here. If you have follow-up questions, please email me personally. Thank you all so much for your time, and I'm going to stop pressing record. And now.